Good morning, guys. What a pleasure it is to be here today. Big crowd. It's good to see you guys backing up actually after last night. I must admit, I was very soft. I went last night, but I only had a cup of wine, so my limit is somewhere around there, and then things get a bit out of control. So I kept it all under wraps last night, which is good. So I'm here to speak to you guys today about a project I've been working on for almost the last 18 months now, Rocklea to Darra. Ipswich Motorway Upgrade. It's been delivered as an ECI project with BG&E been involved since a tender design with Cardno. So a bit about the delivery of the job. It's been done as a design joint venture from the design perspective between BG&E and Cardno. We shared 50-50 design responsibility. And then the contractor side of things, it's been a three-way JV between Bilby, Hull and Album, BHA JV. Together we come together to deliver what was essentially a design and construct project. So this one here will give you a quick overview of the project. So it starts down at Grenard Road. The project is a motorway upgrade. We rationalise some ramps to the east, put managed motorways in and extend the existing ramp to make it conforming. The motorway out there is in pretty bad shape, so everything's very old and doesn't meet current standards. We put through some cycleway facilities, so that's a really big part of this job. Surprisingly, when we think we're doing a motorway upgrade, the cycle provisions wouldn't be big, but probably one of the more complex sides of things. Overlaying the westbound carriageway, the eastbound carriageway remains as is through here, so structural overlay. And then the challenge to the job starts around Saskatoon intersection through here, where we raise up the existing formation around 1.5 metres to deal with flooding. We got traffic of around 80,000 vehicles per day, 15 to 20% heavies, and we're trying to work on top of ourselves. So the staging is quite complex. Donaldson Overpass Bridge remains, but we go down 1.5 metres below it. So we're working around some existing piers in that area. Again, quite complex. Cycleways are going through, and we've got to cut through this area. So we're cutting the top off a crest, improving sight distance and getting through there at a lower level. Through the floodplain is where the fun really starts. We've got 2 new service roads, and we raise the motorway up 2.5 metres. Again, under its current footprint, trying to build on top of ourselves. So at each river crossing, we've got 4 new structures. So there's 4 across the first creek, 4 across the second creek, and 2 at the back creek. For a total of 10 new bridges. 7 are completely new, the remaining 3 are upgrades to existing. This one here we built over the top of an existing culvert and extended some of those culverts, so again, really complex, tricky work in a tight area. And then we've done a fair bit of augmentation as well of existing council roads, so augmentation of a big intersection, and then some ramp rationalisation. So the project actually goes all the way to Centenary Motorway, but that's mainly ITS scope. So our main principal works, I guess, finishes here at Oxley. So this just clicks through what the highlights of the jobs are. Upgrading from 4 to 6 lanes, the new bridges, new service roads, and then the peds and cyclists, as I said, were a big challenge on this job. And then some signalised intersections. So the project was delivered by, was funded by the state and federal government. So 50-50 split, so lots of reporting responsibilities as well. So this gives you an idea of the kind of environment we're dealing with. So building next to the existing motorway, 2 new bridges are going in there. You can see in the green there embankments. They're about 2 metres high preloading next to the existing. This must have been taken at lunchtime because the traffic is usually far worse than this. But that gives you an idea of the constrained kind of footprint that we're working within. This is one of the local roads, giving you an idea of what we're dealing with in terms of trucks. We're trying to sandwich a cyclist path between the motorway and where that truck is swinging out. So that's why the cyclists are such a challenge, and these kind of heavy vehicles are really typical of the site. this is when I talk about temporary work. So you can see in the centre there, we've got what looks like a new section of highway. That's essentially just a temporary stage we built so we can stage these culverts that you'll see down here at the kind of halfway through the screen where that yellow man's standing. So we're just trying to extend those. And this is the degree of temporary works we need to do to enable that. So the temporary works are a big challenge. So what I'm here to talk to you guys today about is Rocklea to Darra from my perspective as design manager and what my challenges were on the job. So big ones for me were controlling quality. I was a new design manager to this job. It was my first major project. So making sure I got that quality point was really important. Providing some freedom. It's something I'm pretty passionate about personally. Letting my staff work as and when they want. Recognising that a big job like this is going to have some big hours, but really enabling the staff to work when best suited them for that. Design efficiency, like let's not lie, ultimately we're here to make some money, so how do we squeeze as much efficiency out of this design as we can? And also piloting BIM. So some of you guys might have heard me talk back at Built about BIM. This presentation won't be about BIM as much, I'll touch on it, but really it's about getting some systems in place to enable that. So the first three challenges that I talk about today were really enabled for me in a big part by 12D Synergy. Lincoln, as a great salesman he was on to me on, I think he was maybe the second or third person to call me after we won the job. So kudos to Lincoln. But really I needed a solution to begin with that really helped address that client quality requirement. So what you can see there on the left-hand side of the screen for you guys is the client quality requirements for going into TeamBinder. TeamBinder was placed on us as a requirement by TMR, and what that is a naming convention. Now you can't read it, but the point of it being there is that the naming convention is pretty detailed. And one concern you have on a job like this is engineers such as myself who love to label documents SC Rev 2 13 to the 5th 2018 Rev A, just as a way to keep tracking it, and you just can't do that when you're working on a project of this scale from a quality control point of view. So I needed a system that would force my team to name things as they had to be named. I also had some pretty stringent requirements to comply with from an SWTC perspective. So TMR had an SWTC. With that, I had to produce a design management plan. Now, both BG&E-Cardno had their own design management plans, but both were built around our businesses. And what I needed was a platform that I could build a quality plan around that I could sort of mould to suit my requirements. And also poorly suited folder structuring. So again, this doesn't sound very interesting, but super important on a big job like this to get it right. This is an example of what actually the BG&E home folder looks like for this job, and it's a complete mess. There's files everywhere. It's a mess, and it's kind of excusable because we use Synergy for this job. So this is just a dumping ground. But the fact that guys can get in there and dump stuff, call folders what they want, there's random things sitting in there, just a horrible mess. And when you've got over 80 people working on this job, is what I had at the peak, this just would have been an absolute nightmare to try and take the conventional approach. So my solution again was Synergy. Again, early engagement with Lincoln helped me really get my head around what we could do in this space. We set up a lot of naming rules around how we would name our folders and files, such that anything that goes in had to be a certain name and had to be in the right place. Folder structuring as well. It gave me free rein to set up a folder structure that suited a major project. It wasn't based around business requirements and what a typical project looks like in a business sense, but really the delivery of a complex, multidisciplinary, finite period project. So that was really valuable. The other thing from a quality perspective that was great was the fact that guys had to check in and check out their work. Now, again, it's just a small step, but when you're working in a team of 80 and you're moving fast, it's quite easy for guys to kind of slacken off and not take maybe some accountability and ownership for their work. And just that simple fact that as they're in Synergy and they're checking in and checking out a file and their name is traced against that, I think maybe even just that psychological thing of owning that check in, check out really helped. For me, from my own personal perspective as a design manager, it enabled me to set up a space, again, completely bespoke folder setup, where I had a space where I knew that once they come into my ready for review design manager approval folder, they'd been through doc control. The doc controllers were happy that all the quality was checked off, and my final check really was just to make sure all the pages were there. I knew that there'd been an engineering check. I knew that there'd been an independent check. I know that it had been challenged, and my final review became as simple as a tick and flick, really. So that was a big positive. Next one is staff flexibility. So this was kind of driven by a selfish driver by me. I had my third expected during the project. I already had 2 boys and my wife was 3 months pregnant. So I wanted a platform that would enable me to step away from the job for a couple of weeks and be at home, but not step away in a way that I had to give up oversight, I won't say control, but oversight of the project so that I could still see things happening and I could still touch what we were doing really easily. It's also really important for me knowing that this was going to be a big, long, hard slog for a lot of the guys to just enable that flexibility. Do you want to work from home in the mornings? Do you want to go home in the evening and work from home? So just enabling that flexibility. So a lot of offices typically have that at the moment, and it's not really a new thing. But the challenge comes when you try and bring that to a design joint venture and you're working with a partner. So in this job, BG&E-Cardno working together, typically we would have systems on our own that would enable this, but not together. There's always some firewall issues with outsiders coming into your home network. And beyond that, I had 8 sub-consultants. So other than the top table, there was 8 others who needed to get in and out of our systems. Being able to set up our own server with Synergy on it and basically allowing whomever access that we wanted was a really big driver for me. And again, Synergy was the solution for this one. So we use BIM, and I'll talk a bit more on that a touch later, but that meant that we had a BIM coordinator down in Newcastle. He was managing quite large files, Navisworks files of up to 750 meg, a gig, and we had Revit designers, 12D guys, giving him information in lots of different formats. Synergy was a really good place for that all to live. We could see what was current, and again, we could work on it really remotely. Allowed me to work from home while I had my bub, enabled a lot of the mums on the job to go home, pick the kids up, and then work in the evenings. And even when a design review was due, myself and the guys could all go home and have dinner with our families, or go to the pub with our mates, or go to footy training, or whatever it may be, and then come back in at 8:30, 9 o'clock from the comfort of the couch with a beer in hand and get in and review these things. And that was just really valuable. Like we still did the work and we still did the long hours, but it just took us away from the office. And something I really encourage, whether or not you use Synergy as a platform, but on a major project, it just gave that guys that little bit of respite without losing our productivity. Design efficiency. Again, I had a tight time frame to deliver this in and a tight budget given the time this was tendered. 2016 wasn't the time it is now. We were still very hungry for the work, so I didn't have a huge budget. So one of the things I really wanted to do in this was get rid of the paper-based design approach. It's slow, it's cumbersome. We rely on printers. It's really old school. And we were trying to convey an approach to TMR whereby we said to them, we don't need to deliver you guys reams and reams of paper. We're going to give you this federated model. We're going to give you some PDFs. Why do we need to take a paper-based approach? For me to sell that with any amount of conviction, I really had to change our approach of delivery to getting our engineers to not use that paper-based approach. It's just not fair for us to go down that path but expect our client not to. So we unplugged printers on week 2. Somehow they got plugged back in along the way and some of the older guys still used them. But really, I think it was a pretty good success. The material costs alone from paper and ink were in the order of 2.5K, and the productivity cost is significant. When you think about the cost it takes for the guys to get up off their seat, walk to the printer, have a scratch while the document prints and bring it back to their desk. Over a project of a year with a team of up to 80, there's a big productivity cost in all that. So the solution 12D Enable for this Synergy was we created what we called a pink room. It was a legacy from Tender where we had a pink room where documents would end up. So at Tender we would drop our bundle of printed documents off with a form on top of them, and we would go through and mark them up, and each person would do the markup and they'd sign the form, somewhat like a conventional one. The engineer would back check. For the detailed design, we made a room in Synergy for this. A PDF would go in there. We'd be able to see who checked in and checked the form out, so there was that traceability. And me as design manager could jump in at the end, check the revision history. Everyone's reviewed it. I could see a markup has been reviewed. I could make my own review in there. I could see the reviews have been actioned. And again, it just really improved its efficiency. At the end of the design, we took back about maybe a couple hundred drawings to store for QA purposes, and I think our markups were in the range of 20 to 30,000 drawings. So just in terms of that material saving was just huge. The last one I'll talk about is how we tackled BIM on the job, and that was really an integration of 12D and 12D synergy, with 12D providing our solution to all the civil elements of the BIM, and synergy providing our place that enabled us to build it, our collaboration software. So Rocklea to Darra was TMR's pilot BIM job. It was spoke about at the Tech Forum back in 2016 and was part of the EOI documents when they landed. It was back then they called it Smart Infrastructure Management. I think they're kind of steering away from that now, more towards BIM, but it was a first for us. And this is a quick video of what our BIM looked like between the prelim and detailed design. This is on the TMR website. I won't let it play through in its entirety. You can jump on there and have a look at it. It's on the TMR YouTube site as well. So we use 12D to do all our civils. So alignment, easy, but pavements as well, guardrail, in-ground services, all PUP, all drainage was done in 12D. And for me as a design manager, that was a really important element. I wanted to have as little interfaces as I could. And the 12D guys were a pleasure to work with in terms of training. So we had Pete Taden come in early to give the guys a run through of how to best use BIM, how to best use 12D to facilitate BIM. And again at the end when we ended up getting very detailed with things like pavement boxing. So that support is just was really outstanding and something that we don't get from other suppliers. So hats off to 12D for that. This is the complex bridge culvert interface. Again, it's not showing it here in a great amount of detail. The power of BIM is that we can actually get in there, and this is a model that we can navigate around in. I'll leave it there. I don't want to take up all your time this morning, but this is available on TMR's website for Rocklea to Darra. Just Google Rocklea to Darra and you'll find it. So the software packages we use. So as I said, 12D was our really the only civil product we used. It was for alignment, drainage, guardrail, pavements, so all the things you would expect. But then we also used it to do things like drape our lighting, drape our signal poles, our ITS posts, all that sort of stuff. So it was a really valuable tool for all those sorts of things. Revit was a tool we used for our structures, worked very well. And the new interface, so we've recently been awarded a $40 million variation on Rocklea to Darra, and the new Revit 12D interface is working exceptionally well, and it's something that you guys should definitely explore. Synergy was our home base for everything, so that's where we stored all our big files, and it's what enabled our BIM guy to pluck things in and put them back. Tekla was used a little bit by the engineers. Navisworks was our home base for BIM, and then AutoCAD for some 3D surfaces. SketchUp was a really useful tool for making weird and wonderful objects, and then TeamBinder was TMR's QA platform. This is my only 12D slide in this, so it shows my appreciation and knowledge of 12D is pretty limited, I guess. But one thing that's worth mentioning is it's a change for the guys, and they do need some training, and you do need to invest some time, and you're probably going to blow your budget the first time you try and do it. But I mean, bear with it. We're doing it again now on our variation, and it's pretty much business as usual now. So that first time you're going to feel some pain, but it's definitely worth it. So just be aware of that. This is the kind of stuff the guys were creating in SketchUp that we needed to enable our BIM. So again, I had students building this and really valuable bits and bobs, something to keep in mind. 12D drainage in there, interfacing with some bits and pieces the guys made in SketchUp. Pretty useful approach. And this is what our structures are looking like coming out of Revit. And now these are going into 12D. It's really making life easier. Another thing to keep in mind when you're going on the BIM journey, particularly with the 12D interface, is when to get your level of detail in. Just be careful of this. A big learning for me was we went too hard too early. We were probably getting to like the detailed level of detail within about 2 to 3 months, when we should have just held it back a lot longer, because the fine detailing you see in that IFC level is time consuming. 12D again helped us with our drawings, so we use these sketches rather than drawings for our delivery. So these are pretty much raw outputs with a little bit of drafting touch up for concept and prelim. These are both concept and prelim drawings. So none of the jewelry, just raw 12D outputs. The drafters are at them for about half an hour, and my concept GAs were coming out in a day of drafting for a set of 20 rather than a week. By the time we got to detailed design, we were putting all the notes and bits and bobs on there, so these drawings are a lot more significant effort. I can't see that there's a huge amount of extra value, so one of the learnings for the future is to try and pull back this level of detail we're going to when we're taking the BIM path. And again, the raw outputs from 12D working really well from an alignment long section perspective, just raw outputs touched up a little bit from a drafting perspective and banged in, so good saver for us. These are some of the examples of what the guys were doing from a Revit space, showing what our concept documentation looked like. So again, we pulled our documentation right back from a structural perspective, prelim design, the type of things that we're putting forward. This is kind of off the 12D topic, but something I thought you guys might be a little bit interested in. And again, just trying to really scale back. So we're giving our model as a deliverable and also these sketches. So some examples of the success that were enabled through both 12D synergy and the use of 12D and the wider adoption of BIM was really the collaboration. That's the key to me. It enables that early stakeholder input and clash detection and stuff. So you can see here on the left is a load transfer platform drawing, and on the right is what it looks like in the BIM. So really, I mean, it's a step above. The amount of coordination that enabled us was just huge. Again, the alignment's done in 12D. These services you see underground are done in 12D. The fencing's done in 12D. All of the civil works essentially are coming from a 12D environment. Culverts are pretty daunting to look at as drawings and don't really give us much information. Again, in a BIM space, just a huge amount more info. Given our job was so complex and heavily trafficked, we really needed to understand constructability. So getting some really good gains in that area. The red is existing culverts and the white is what we're proposing. Safety and design, just hugely beneficial. Again, like it's just next level in terms of what it's enabling us to do. We can sit in workshops with the guys who are inspecting bridges and they can have a look where they're inspecting these platforms, spill throughs, fencing, all this stuff. We can just look at in huge detail. ITS, just an absolute nightmare on this job, really. But without the inputs that we had from programs like 12D into our federated model, I don't think we would have got through it. We would have been fumbling around on site trying to thread the needle, whereas we could do this from the desktop. So really powerful stuff. You'll spend a lot of money doing it, but really powerful stuff. Future-proofing, again, we can visualize where these big structures are going, how they're interfacing with what we're building. Really useful for the client. We didn't do future-proofing drawings. As such, this was used as our future-proofing, so you can see it, it's there. And that's me. So apologies for rushing through that. A lot of content to cover in a short amount of time. Feel free to get in touch. LinkedIn's the best way for me. I'm always happy to talk to people. And yeah, any questions, please do let me know. Thank you, guys.